welcome Lloyd Thompson, founder of Virtual DOO. Now, that in itself requires a good conversation. Who makes a company and just says Virtual DOO? What does Virtual DOO mean?
It stands for Virtual Director of Operations. And to be honest, when I started this business, I was looking for Virtual COO, but someone already had that domain name. So effectively, what we're providing is a person who sits between the founder and the team, typically a team of size 5 to 25 staff. And we do that on a fractional month-to-month basis. And it's virtual, meaning that we can do this remotely. So we've got a small team around the world, and we can run remote teams, various different industries and different companies, as long as the core team are available remotely, just like we are talking today on Zoom.
That's the world we live in, isn't it? The world is pretty small now. Okay, so Director of Operations. So that means that you can basically go into any business and look at them and manage them. Is that about right?
Yeah, there's a lot of, we've found that most of our clients, and just because of the way I started, are marketing and e-commerce. But since then, we've had all sorts of businesses. So my first client was an e-commerce, and then suddenly we referred to marketing, and then back to e-commerce and marketing and so forth. But thanks to COVID, and not everyone thanks COVID, but it's caused this huge change for people working remotely. Many businesses have transformed into be able to do that. And so we've even worked with plenty of bricks and mortar businesses, from construction and real estate management. And then, of course, if you look at e-commerce, then that would have warehousing as well. And what we find is that there's a lot of things that businesses, or challenges that businesses will have in common. So in terms of like, what are the rhythms that need to run the team? What are the things they're measuring? What are the feedback loops to make sure that operations are running smoothly and we're constantly getting better? So there's a commonality across businesses in general.
And 30 plus years out in industry, and I've worked in well over 70 plus businesses myself. Businesses say, yes, we're unique. And pretty much there is so much commonality between them. They all have a P&L statement. They all have an asset register. They all have people involved. They all have CEO or C-suite of some variety. They all have people actually doing the work. There's a lot of commonalities there. Therefore, and it should be possible to run them.
Yeah, and when we go into businesses that are getting used to working online, or even businesses that have been working online for a while, because we've worked with so many businesses in this manner, it's normally very quickly that we're going to see things like, we've seen this problem before, or we know how to improve that. For example, how do the team communicate today? A lot of teams are communicating on WhatsApp. They don't have a proper chat channel established like a Teams, or I like Slack, for example, but all different. What's the communication channel? Where are their SOPs stored, their standard operational procedures? Where are they storing their customer information? Do they have a process for reaching out to customers and making sure that they're maximizing the most they have after they've acquired that lead? Like, are they really making sure they've not left money on the table? So there's so much commonality across businesses.
You hurt me so much with that one, Lloyd. You really do, with that following up leads and money on the table. I was having a session with my mentor, JT Fox, and he was talking about a formula that he put together to see how you were rating as a business and follow-up. And I performed so poorly on the follow-up side of things that it threw all the rest of the work that I was doing out the window. It didn't matter all the rest of the work that I was doing, because I wasn't following up well enough and often enough and with the right approach. Therefore, I was just losing so much money as a result.
Yeah. Well, isn't that the great thing about being a business owner, though? Like, when you've got people that you can turn to who can guide you and give you advice and show you where the opportunities are. And if you were thinking that you were in a perfect position, there'd be nowhere to grow. And now you've just found an amazing opportunity.
And don't think that I haven't taken to that opportunity, by the way. It was a good slap across the face. Hey, this is where your biggest issue is. And I didn't even realize it. I work with people like yourself, exceptional people like yourself, every single day. I keep track of, these are my goals, this is my issues, this is what I need to follow up on. It wasn't even on my radar. I wasn't talking to someone about my business. I was talking about, how I spend my time talking about how can I improve other people's businesses and I wasn't
And
focused on my own.
I can relate to this. I mean, for a long time, I was in corporate world and running large remote teams and doing delivery, and that's what I was focused on. But I wasn't focused on how I go about acquiring customers because that wasn't my role. And now I'm a business owner. Now I've got to know that side. And so I also, like you, I have a coach, and that's made a huge difference because you want to be able to grow from your blind spot.
You do. Now, let's get back to you. So you are a virtual DOO, but you're also the coach as well. That's to be half your business, dealing with the CEO and the founder and dealing with the other people in the business. You've got to be that wise coach in the background, looking over their shoulders.
So the way I work in my business, when I started this business, it was just me. My now coach connected me with one client, and I got working with that one client, and I learned a lot about how to be a business owner and start running my own sales and marketing in the background. But as I grew, I took on more clients. And then when I hit 3, that was the maximum I could take on personally. I had a virtual assistant and so forth. But now when I hit, when I got another client, that's when I hired from within my network. And so now I'm not the person who's the operator. I have a team of operators around the world, and I act as I say a coach, but I'm hiring people who are really experienced. And so I would say more of a soundboard. So I'll find someone within my team who'll be best suited for that client based on their experience, where I think that client is really going to need the support. It's a little bit like dating, right? It's a bit like you've got in corporate world, I was used to hiring for me. And I would say, right, these are the values that are instilled in my team. These are the skills I'm looking for. But now when I'm looking at the client, I've got to find not just someone from within my team, but I also need to find what's the culture fit of that client. And give you an example, early on, I made a mistake. I put in someone into a business where the culture of that team was very, let's make a decision and let's make it fast. No analysis. Let's just go. If we make a mistake, we'll turn around and go the other way. And I gave them someone who was much more, let's do a bit more analysis. And neither of us believe we're going full down the road of analysis paralysis, because quite often the cost of going to the very nth of analysis is just going to be too expensive, whereas you might as well just try to do something and find out if it works. But this guy, he wasn't a fit for that client. So I'd put myself back in there. But he was an ideal fit for someone else. So it's about finding the right fit for that business and understanding what they need in terms of skill, but also culture.
So would you say that you're reasonably skilled at finding the right person for that right role? The reason that I ask this is the person that the CEO that you're putting the person in with, they're not going to have as much experience as you. And there's the expense of going out, finding the right person, bringing them in. They didn't work out. Then you've got to go back out, find another person, bring them back in. Whereas with your business, okay, this just isn't working out. We don't have a match here. It's not working out. And then you just go and swap someone else in. That is so efficient from the business perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I really like the way you describe that. We're not there to be there forever, actually. We're there, ironically, to make ourselves redundant. So we start typically with an operational assessment. So we'll go in, it's like a 1 month where we will look at the business, we'll understand how it's working, we'll look for all of the opportunities, we'll play back to the founder or business owner every week, hey, these are the things we're seeing and this is what we'd actually do about it. Now, in the background, this gives that business owner an opportunity to get a feeling for, is this the kind of person I'd like to work with for the eventual remediation? Is this person working out with my team? So that's kind of what's happening in the background. This audit or operational assessment is really kind of an audition, really. And at the end of that month, we'll play back all of our findings and we'll prioritize it by effort and impact. So if it's low effort, high impact, priority number 1, and we say, right, here's all the list. This is what we'll do about it. That client can then decide if they want to remediate themselves within their team or if they just want us to do it. And we'll just be there on a month-to-month retainer. So for them, it's very low risk. They've only got us. They're only on risking a month, shall we say, but they'd have a pretty good idea from the audit whether they want to work with us or whether we can do it. And they can work with us on a month-to-month basis until we've remediated all of those things we found. And basically, because it's month-to-month, they can keep us on as long as they like with anything else they want us to implement and run with the team. And it usually finishes with they might have someone in their team who understands the rhythms that we've put in. And that's what we hope. We hope that they learn and grow and use the rhythms we've installed with the team and dashboards and the feedback loops and so forth. So we can uplift and train the team so they can now run it. Perhaps they now have someone who's confident to be a general manager and they want to take this on. Or they've now got the scale where they think, okay, I want to take on an outside full-timer. So with us, we're a month to month. We're typically fractional, which is not such a popular term here in Australia, but in the US, people understand that. And fractional for the audience typically means this is someone who will be across 2 or 3 businesses. You're not paying the rate of a full timer, but you're getting access to an experienced professional on a retainer basis who really has a lot of knowledge in the area.
Okay, I'm sorry, Lloyd, to interrupt you, but I have to. I have to correct you and rephrase all of that. Sorry, because it's just not working for me. Okay, so for the audience, let me rephrase this.
All right.
What a fractional means is that right now it is well documented that in-house staff in the office actually are productive about 17% of the time. That's not a lot. Whereas what a fractional person like Lloyd's talking about is you hire someone in for 20% of the time, as an example, and they work 20% of the time, maybe 25% of the time. Whereas you hire someone in to work in your business, you pay them 100% of the time and get 17% of the work. So they may be fractional, but they produce the entire body of work that you would normally get from a normal employee because they're entirely focused on getting a task done. Sorry, Lloyd, just had to correct you on all that.
Actually, there's an interesting point you raised there, which is I think some people say, well, if you allocate less time for a fractional resource, does it mean you're going to get less output? And actually, in our case, because we're that one person between us and the team, we're there to drive out the work. We're there to get stuff done. We're there not to do all of it ourselves. That's the point. So quite often the thing that's slowing us down is not the fractional resource, in our case, who's that director of operations, general manager, COO. It's actually what's the capacity of the team to absorb the change that we're rolling out. And so that's where we have to be mindful. And when we're in there in that role between the founder and the team, we're looking at what is the capacity of the team? Do they have the right roles? Do we need to hire? What's the budget doing if that founder wants to share the budget with us? Because sometimes they want to keep that private and that's okay. That's how we operate.
I've done that same thing in organizations for KPMG, PwC, all of that, the big four and various other people as well. It doesn't matter the size of the business that you do that for either. It is the same process. When you're talking a business of 10 to 15 or less, or whether you're talking hundreds or thousands of people, that same process is necessary. Okay, let's start talking about me for a change. We've spoken a lot about you. Let's talk about me and my clients for a bit. Let's get focused. We have the same issue in roll-ups every single time. We go into a business, they're really good at what they do. However, and we're talking businesses here of less than 10 people doing over $1 million. So they're really good at what they do, but they're not business people. They're just not. So how do your skills work with that?
Well, if we're talking about exits or people getting to look to exit their business and they're looking to sell for a good price, then I would say there's 4 core areas that I'd like to talk about on this topic.
Write them down.
So just if I back up for a second, I've worked with a couple of exit facilitation businesses and I've learned quite a bit about their process. And there's kind of 3 areas that they cover, and then I'll get into the 4 concepts. So we'll back up a minute. So the first thing that these exit facilitators will normally do is focus on how they can get that business owner out of the day-to-day. Because if that business owner is stuck doing all the things in the core operations, scattergunning the team with tasks, instead of focusing on strategy, where the new deals are coming from, how are they going to sell a business if their business is them? So that's the first thing we're normally looking at, is getting the business owner out of the day-to-day. So that's kind of a first thing. The second thing these exit facilitators will do is look at how they can then grow that business. And to some extent, my business does a bit of that. We're not marketers. We do a thing called revenue ops, but that's perhaps a topic for another day. But the high level part of that is looking at the CRM, the sales and the marketing team, and the people who engage with that customer database, and make sure that we're maximizing the opportunities, those leads that we've already spent time and money to acquire, to make sure we can maximize the most out of that. However, these exit facilitators will do more. Perhaps they've got vendors and partners they can engage. And then the third thing they will do is typically facilitate the sale. So I've learned a lot from these people. And so that's just the high level process that they will engage in. And that just brings me into the point where I want to talk about is these 4 areas to focus on when a business owner is looking to exit. And so the first area I want to talk about is focusing on your specialization, your unique selling point, your one thing. And the reason that's important is, and I might be unfair in saying this, a lot of these visionary business owners, they focus on all of these shiny objects. They see all of these different ideas coming from here and they go, oh, maybe I need to focus on this. Maybe I need to focus on that. And the problem is they end up they lose focus where they could find so much opportunity focusing on that one thing they're really good at. I mean, we work with a performance marketing agency recently. So they do Google ads and Facebook ads. And their one thing that they were really good at is the Google ads. And they started doing Facebook ads for people as well. And without going into the technical part of this, these things are a bit different in terms of how you do the creatives and, do you do video? Do you do image? All of the setup around Facebook ads is different to the whole world of Google ads, right? And by doing the Facebook ads as well, they're spending time, money, and resources on this whole other area, which sounds to people who don't know ads is like, oh, it's all just advertising. But this is a huge attention grab, right? This is not their core area. And so when they moved into focusing on their one thing, their USP, the opportunity of that is they can productize much easier. They can systemize much easier. It means that you then become the person that you know for being the Google Ads agency, or we're the fractional operations agency, or the email marketing business. People come to know you
dental
for that.
roll-ups. Dental
roll-ups business, yeah. And so
me.
That's like, this is it. Go to if you're in the dental roll-ups in this space, Craig Keegan's the guy. People come to know you for that thing, whereas a mishmash of things. So that's the first thing, is making sure that you focus on that one thing where you can go deep, people know it for you. And then that brings me on to the second point, which I briefly touched on, which is about the systemization. So once you've focused on one thing rather than a whole suite of services, if you've got a whole suite of services, that's very hard to systemize. It's very hard to sell. Like, now you've got a product, you can train a sales team how to sell that product. You can say, this is the price of this product. If you've got customer service, you can train customer service on that product. It allows you to systemize, get your operational procedures, grow a team. Whereas if it was all just floating services, all of these different things, you can see how it leads to ambiguity. It doesn't lead to special skill area. It leads to the founder having to be creative and come back in and think, oh, how are we going to do this and that? So creating systems and processes, getting SOPs in place. And I think a lot of business owners struggle with this. And what I've seen is, I think, how am I going to take what's in my brain and spend and have the time to create all of these SOPs? I think, I'm going to have to do all of this SOP writing. And it's actually not as hard as it sounds. The most simple process that I recommend to people is, I call it I, we, you. And I've got a team member in the Philippines who does my bookkeeping, he does my video editing, does all sorts of things. But bookkeeping is quite a complex thing. And so I used I, we, you. And what I do, I fire up a Zoom session like this, and I say, right, this is the process. I hit record and I do it. So I run the process. And this is going to probably take a few times. And in that conversation, I say to him, hey, what I want you to do is I want you to write up your learnings. You can use this recording, but I want you to put it into a document somewhere so you can refer to it again. That's the SOP, and you'll be able to get used to doing this. Now, it's a bit unfair to expect him to be able to just pick this up and do it again the next time. We've just had one handover. So the next thing we do is we have a number of we do it's. So this time, what's going to happen is we'll jump on Zoom again. We'll share our screen like this, and he will drive now. He's going to try to do it. So this is the we part. And he can ask me questions. Like, what do we do here? Oh, this is a weird, how do I reconcile this item? I'm not sure. Does this have GST or is it in a US item? I'm not sure. So each time he will go and update the SOP with the learnings. And eventually, once we've gone through that a number of times, you do it. That's him. He now owns that process. And that's off my chest now. I don't own that anymore. And that team member can then hand that over by exactly the same process to another person. So that is the really high level. And some people are like, wow, it's so simple.
It's so simple. I've been doing that for years. And
Fantastic.
all I do is I store it on a file system in a video, and then I create a Word document. And then when I get a new on board, I say, here, go to this Word document. And it's just got the links to all of those videos, and they can just step through it bit by bit. And then that's where they can initially do it. Then they can come back with questions, and then we can do it if necessary. Even I can do that.
Yeah, it's so simple, but it's not obvious to people. And these things can deliver amazing results. We worked with a video marketer who was he already had a very detailed SOP. So which is great. He's already there. It's like a recipe for a very detailed audit that he'll run on a YouTube channel. And this thing takes a very long time for their team to do. Because it's such a detailed SOP recipe of steps, I said, hey, I reckon we can automate this. And by the way, automation is getting so much easier with AI tools that are out there. It's no longer this thing that requires a huge amount of complexity. The bar for being able to automate is lower. So we took this process that used to take his team hours, and we got a developer in, and this developer has taken this huge process, and instead of taking hours, it now runs in minutes. And we took it to the next level a couple of years ago. Actually, this is now an evolving thing, right? It's now a product. So this is no longer just an automation. It's now a product where it's got a front end. He can give it to clients. They can put in their channel, their YouTube channel in there. It will go in, it will run the analysis and put it out. And so this has just had a huge amount of benefits. No longer takes the team effort. And this is actually a part of the selling process. It used to be that founder would jump on a call, run the channel, so this is what you do about it. But now they can say, you know what? I'll give access to this tool for you. And if you want us to implement the findings, we'll do it. So it just gives you a taster of what taking a process and putting it into an SOP and systemizing can do. It hands it off to the team, means it's repeatable, and perhaps in this day and age, especially with AI and the automation, it means that it can be owned by someone else or a machine. So that's the number three. The third one is building a sales machine. So quite often, the last role for a founder in a business is quite often sales. They started the business. They know the product inside out. They're there doing strategy, but they're often there being the face of their business. And so if we're talking about, as you said, sort of businesses of 10 people, in my case, I focus on 5 to 25. So there's definite overlap there. Quite often we find the founder selling. And so then that means that if someone's coming in and wanting to buy their business, they want certainty that selling is still going to be able to continue. They want to know that they can pull a lever and get business. And so it really depends on the size of the business and where they are, what that is. And if I look at the higher end of town, these bigger businesses, a typical pattern that I see over and over again is they'll run ads, maybe it's Google ads, and they'll run those ads to a sales team, and the sales team will do the selling. So they built that capability to hand off selling in there. And quick tip, I would typically have 2 salespeople because it means you've got some redundancy in a team and they'll compete with each other. So that's just one point. So that's at the higher end of town. And at the lower end, in my business, I'm mostly a referral-based business. But there's still a system to that, which is that about 3 months in, at 3 months in, the alarm clock goes off. And I think, right, this is a great time to check in with the client. And I say, right, how's this going for you? Are you getting a good result? Can you give us feedback? And they're mostly going to say yes. I'd be worried if they don't. They're going to say, yes, we're happy. They wouldn't have renewed and gone month to month. They hadn't got that far. And I go, great. This is where I'll say, you know what we do? Who else do you know that would benefit from services like us. That's systematic referral. That's a strategy. That is a part of, and that's where most of my sales come from. That is actually the sales process. So very important. Number 3, make sure there's a sales process. Make sure it doesn't depend on the founder. And then finally, to get to number 4, empowering management. So again, a founder, if they're looking to sell their business, a buyer doesn't want to buy a job. So what happens is, normally the first thing, and this is the way it certainly worked with me, normally the first thing you hand off is administration. So I've got an office manager in the Philippines who does all of my administration and more. That's the first thing. The second thing you normally hand off is delivery. And for me, in my business, I'm very lucky to have a very good delivery team. Now, if you're not someone whose background is running teams, you're probably now stuck into sort of coordinating teams and making sure everything goes together. And that's where a lot of business owners get stuck. And so that's where you've got to empower the management. You've got to empower the team. You find someone who can step up and own it. And a lot of business owners aren't comfortable empowering the team. And so one of the things that we do, instead of delegating tasks, we delegate outcomes. We say, look, this is what we're looking for. This is what it looks like it's done when it's complete. What actually tends to happen is these people go back to the business owner and they ask a zillion questions, and the founder's then stuck there answering all the questions. And so this comes down to coaching. This comes down to saying, having the discipline to coach the team to say, right, when you come to me with a problem, I call it the 1-3-1. Come to me with one problem, I want you to come up with 3 solutions. It might be do nothing, and what are the other 2? And I'm using 3 as an example. And then not just the options, but the one you would pick. And that's training. And it's very hard to do because it takes, you see a problem, you can just go, oh, do that. But then the person never learns. And so I might be trivializing this by saying, oh, you just do that. It's actually really hard for a lot of business owners to do that. And so they get stuck here. And so this is where a lot of business owners will then get to the point where they think, right, this is where we can look to hire a general manager. And if they can't afford that, obviously there's something like us where they can look at hiring a fractional general manager, COO, director of operations, who can run that process and help make the team autonomous to the point that they no longer need us anymore. And so that's mainly my last tip or point. You had a question there, Craig.
Oh, I've always got questions, Lloyd, but just want to start to round this off a bit. So in essence, you identify issues, you put together plans and solve issues for businesses and founders, because they are quite different. It's like my dog won't do what I want it to do. And then you go and get the dog trainer in and he says, well, the problem is you, not the dog. The dog's fine. So you've got to train the CEO as well, founders, and get them right.
Yes.
You then need to empower the staffing as well and make sure that they're coming on the journey with you. Would that be a fair summation of?
I think it's a very good summary, yes.
Well, I think all of that's excellent, and especially for the smaller end of town. As you said, yours is up to 25 staff who don't have the depth of experience, most likely. And I've worked in your industries and I recognize all of the words that you use there and your approaches. However, I don't think that everybody will. And that's the issue. If you didn't understand everything that you were saying here, then you really do need to get in contact with Lloyd and find out what you meant by that and what they're missing out on. Because if they didn't understand what you were saying and the strategies you were talking about there, then they're missing something. And they need to make contact with you to go in depth in that and find out what they're missing and what they're missing in their business.
Yeah, thank you so much, Craig. And actually on that topic, I have a book which is on Amazon, but I actually give it away as a PDF on my website. So for the listener, if they want to go to virtualdoo.com/book, they can download the book for free, and they can it's a very short book. It's a primer basically of what we do and where that founder or business owner will see the blind spots that they go, aha, I can fix it myself, or they can engage someone like us to help them with those areas.
Thank you for that. That's fantastic bonus for everybody here. And I'll make sure that that's at the back of this session as well. But I want to, I've said this before on podcasts, and people that have listened to my podcast have heard me say this. My granddad had a saying, why have a dog and bark yourself? Well, Lloyd, you're the dog. So you're the professional at doing this stuff. People should be coming out to you and understand where their gaps are, their personal gaps. They're very good at what they do. They're excellent at what they do. but they haven't got the time, they haven't got the experience, they haven't got the decades of experience and breadth of experience that you've obtained and your team have obtained. And finding the right person to fit their business that they're going to get value from, that they can come in, they can get a big bang for their dollar, and then look at other areas as well. So that's why I think that your business is such a good one.
Thank you so much, Craig. Yeah, I mean, it's especially if you're thinking of exiting or selling your business, then just having someone take an outside look and give you a list of remediation points could really add to the sales price of your business. So the ROI of having an external person having a look and seeing where the opportunities are is absolutely massive. It's a no-brainer if you're thinking of selling.
It is. You need to invest in yourself to prepare to sell, and you need to do it early, long before you need to sell or need to exit in any fashion whatsoever. And exiting doesn't always mean leaving the building. It might, with roll-ups, it has a whole variety of meanings, what exit can be. So you shouldn't be stuck on the fact that, oh, I'm going to exit. No, you're just going to get what you've been working for all these years and putting all this effort into. It's going to come about for you now. And if you want, it can come about for you again in a few years with roll-ups, because your business can be sold, and sold, and you can get multiple payouts from it each time it's sold. So that's what we aim to set your business up to do. Thank you, Lloyd.
Perfect for the owner.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on the show. Great to be here. Thanks, Craig.
Absolutely. Well.